guys that competed for her attention back then. Both sought to capture Hailey's heart, but she ultimately selected Taylor. He was more serious and focused, whereas Alan was charming, but not really serious. Hailey was already considering her future and sought a serious relationship. Their connection grew swiftly, and they were soon married. Their daughter recently turned 7 years old. The first several years of their marriage were pleasant, but Hailey gradually expressed her unhappiness with her husband. She continually compared him to her friends' husbands who had not yet had children. She was bored of hearing about how those guys showered their spouses with presents and regularly took seaside vacations. Her own life seems mundane to her: job, house, and caring for their child. Their flat was small, her job was uninteresting, and everything seemed dull. She began scolding her husband once more for not succeeding in his work. She cited instances of successful business ventures founded by her friends' spouses. Taylor became weary of hearing his wife's concerns all the time, so they had a fierce disagreement that evening. A few days later, Taylor was at work when he got a call. It was Alan, a former classmate. They communicated occasionally, but not frequently. "Hey Taylor, long time no see, long time no hear, how have you been?" Alan asked pleasantly. After a few minutes of talking, Alan explained the purpose for his call. "Listen, my birthday's next Friday. I would want to invite you and Hailey over. Will you come? There will be many guests, and it will be enjoyable." Taylor instantly agreed and looked forward to the lovely evening. He figured it would be a nice time for him and his wife to unwind. They didn't spend much time together, which might explain why she was so cranky. When Taylor returned home and informed Hailey about Alan's request, he was surprised to see that his wife put all of her negative ideas aside and joyfully consented. He felt relieved. Perhaps she simply needed a diversion. They chose to leave their kid with her grandma that day. On Friday evening, they arrived at Alan's residence. It was vast, with new renovations and a large living area where everyone congregated. There were also some recognizable faces from their academic years. Everyone congratulated the birthday boy and inquired about his accomplishments at work. It appeared that everything was going well for Alan. The pair rapidly became engrossed in the celebratory environment, with Taylor engaging in vibrant talks with the attendees. Hailey concentrated on the evening's host. He observed him closely, marveling at how beautifully things had worked out for him. The alcohol flowed freely as the evening continued. The visitors continued to pour drinks for Taylor, and he quickly became very inebriated. He seldom drank, so big quantities were unusual to him. Not wanting to disturb anyone, he walked to another room and lay down on the couch to rest. The party continued, and Hailey remained at her old classmate's side. He informed her about an entirely different existence. "You know, I still don't understand why we didn't work out back then," she replied thoughtfully, her eyes reflecting significance. Everyone had already drank, and Alan took her comments literally. He wasted no time and stealthily escorted her to his bedroom. Old feelings reappeared, and they started kissing. Hailey felt no misgivings or remorse at that time. She could almost see herself in the magnificent life Alan described. Everything unfolded amid the guests' enthusiastic yells in the adjacent room. Hailey strayed on her spouse for the first time, and it was with a friend. Taylor awoke later, startled by the visitors' loud, joyous yells. He looked at the clock and decided it was time to get home. He went into the living room, where everyone was. He spotted his wife there, sitting with a glass and gazed into space, as if lost in meditation. Taylor ignored it at first since he had just awoken with a throbbing headache. After saying their goodbyes to everyone, they got a cab and drove home. Taylor fell asleep almost as soon as his head struck the pillow. Meanwhile, his wife waited in the kitchen for a long time before retiring to bed. About a month has gone since the event. Every day, Hailey spoke less and less to her husband, spent more time with her friends, and behaved suspiciously. When the mood in the house got uncomfortable, Taylor asked her directly what was wrong, and that's when he heard the most unexpected thing. His wife erupted like a volcano. She began expressing everything that had been building up inside her. First, she voiced unhappiness with their style of living, then housekeeping concerns, and most crucially, that he no longer appealed to her as a man. "So, who attracts you?" inquired her spouse. Alan, his wife, responded sincerely. After such a pronouncement, it was hard to keep mute. The wife indicated that she was weary of her life with Taylor and looked forward to a completely different life with Alan. So she left him. Their daughter was already asleep, so Taylor tried not to raise his voice when he spoke about her future. She said, "We'll figure it out later," and started to gather her belongings. Later, Taylor phoned his former pal to discuss men's issues. But after they discussed their issues, Alan hung up and began ignoring his calls. Taylor has filed for divorce. Throughout this time, his wife only saw their daughter once, but she felt no regret and returned to her boyfriend. She did not even attempt to obtain custody of her own child. Alan apparently wasn't prepared to be a father. Moreover, Taylor would never let his daughter grow up with a stranger. He lived alone with his daughter. It was tough to answer all of her inquiries about her mother, but she gradually appeared to understand everything on her own. Haley clung to her new life and discovered happiness with her sweetheart. However, it did not survive long. Alan turned out to be unprepared for a committed relationship. He was continually looking for ways to have fun while being free of obligations. After some time, Haley started comparing him to her ex-husband and realized Taylor wasn't as horrible as she believed. After 6 months, she ended the relationship with Alan and began phoning her ex-husband. Every time they met with their kid, she tried to elicit compassion by saying things like, "We could go somewhere as a family," or "Ask Daddy, let's have dinner together," and so on. When their kids skipped off to her room and the former spouses were alone, Taylor begged her to stop interfering in his life. She could visit their daughter, but he didn't want her to ruin his life or nerves again. He made it obvious that there would be no more between them. So Haley abandoned her family in pursuit of phantom life improvements. She drowned herself in passion and new connections. However, as is often the case, such shaky partnerships rapidly dissolve. Restoring trust with loved ones, on the other hand, is often impossible. In the end, everyone receives what they deserve. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story.